You have been told that politeness opens doors, that being agreeable keeps you safe, that saying yes makes you respected. But what if the very habits you call polite are quietly erasing your presence, your authority, and your value in the eyes of others? What if your reputation is not being destroyed by your flaws, but by the parts of you that try too hard to be liked? Tonight, we are going to walk into an uncomfortable truth, one most people sense but rarely dare to name. Some forms of politeness are not virtues. They are slow acts of self-erasure. In this video, you will discover why certain socially praised behaviors weaken how you are perceived, how they reshape power dynamics against you, and why stopping them feels frightening yet liberating. If this resonates, comment the phrase, "I choose self-respect," below. Like the video, subscribe, and stay until the end, because what you are about to hear challenges a lie you may have built your life upon. Across history, politeness was never meant to be submission. In ancient philosophy, restraint and courtesy were expressions of inner mastery, not tools for begging acceptance. The Stoics spoke of dignity as an internal posture, something unshaken by approval or rejection, while later moral traditions quietly distorted this idea, turning politeness into obedience and agreeableness into virtue. Over time, societies began rewarding those who made themselves smaller, more predictable, easier to manage. What was once self-command became self-censorship. In modern psychology, this shift aligns with fear-based conditioning. Avoid conflict, avoid rejection, avoid standing out. Yet this misunderstanding has created one of the deepest wounds of our era, a generation praised for being kind while being silently disrespected, tolerated rather than valued, present yet unseen. The first polite habit that quietly dismantles your reputation is over-explaining yourself, because every unnecessary justification you offer teaches people that your decisions require permission, that your boundaries are negotiable, and that your presence must be defended to be allowed to exist. When you explain more than needed, you are not being clear. You are signaling doubt, and doubt is contagious. The human mind is wired to read confidence before logic. So the more you speak to convince, the more others subconsciously search for reasons to resist. You feel polite, reasonable, mature, but what lands is weakness disguised as transparency, and over time, people stop trusting your authority because you do not trust it yourself. The second habit is apologizing for existing rather than for wrongdoing, saying sorry when you speak, when you take space, when you ask questions, when you breathe too loudly in the room. This constant softening of your presence trains others to see you as someone who must compensate for being there, someone whose value is conditional. And once that message is sent repeatedly, respect erodes without a single confrontation. The third habit is saying yes when your body and intuition are screaming no, because you fear disappointing, upsetting, or losing access to others. Each yes spoken against yourself is a silent no to your own authority, and people do not consciously exploit this at first. They simply adjust to it until your time, energy, and dignity are treated as resources rather than as something sacred. The fourth habit is excessive emotional availability. The belief that being endlessly understanding, patient, and forgiving will make people cherish you, when in reality it often teaches them that there are no consequences for crossing your limits. Compassion without boundaries does not elevate relationships. It dissolves them into imbalance, and slowly you become the one who listens, absorbs, and accommodates, while your own needs are postponed into invisibility. The fifth habit is avoiding conflict at all costs, mistaking peace for silence and harmony for self-betrayal, choosing short-term comfort over long-term respect. When you never push back, never clarify, never confront, people do not think you are evolved. They assume you have nothing to defend, and the unspoken hierarchy forms itself without your consent. The sixth habit is excessive humility that borders on self-erasure. Downplaying your skills, dismissing your achievements, softening your language so others do not feel threatened. Unaware that people do not elevate what even you refuse to acknowledge. Humility that denies reality is not virtue. It is fear wearing moral clothing, and it teaches others to overlook you without guilt. The seventh habit is constantly adapting your personality to be digestible, changing tone, opinions, and intensity to match whoever stands in front of you, until no one knows where you truly stand. This flexibility feels polite, but it dissolves identity, and without a stable sense of who you are, others cannot respect you, only use the version of you that suits them in the moment. What makes these habits so dangerous is that they are rewarded early in life, praised by parents, teachers, and peers. So you internalize the idea that being liked is safety, and safety becomes more important than truth, clarity, or strength. Yet reputation is not built on kindness alone. It is built on coherence, consistency, and the quiet gravity of someone who knows where they begin and where others end. And here's the tension most people never resolve. The more you abandon yourself to be polite, the more invisible you become. And invisibility is not protection. It is slow erasure. What makes these polite habits so destructive is not just how others perceive them, but how they quietly reshape your inner world. Because every external compromise slowly becomes an internal belief. You begin to identify as someone who must earn space rather than inhabit it. Someone whose worth depends on being useful, pleasant, and non-threatening. This is where the paradox emerges. The more you try to be morally good in the eyes of others, the more you drift away from psychological integrity. The ego, frightened of rejection, dresses this fear in noble language, calling it kindness, empathy, maturity, when in reality, it is often an avoidance strategy. You are not choosing peace. You are fleeing tension. And unresolved tension does not disappear. It accumulates. It hardens into resentment, exhaustion, and a subtle contempt toward those who take what you never learned to withhold. Modern society reinforces this trap by rewarding surface harmony over depth. You are taught that being calm means never expressing anger, that being evolved means never asserting dominance, that being good means never making others uncomfortable. Yet discomfort is often the birthplace of clarity. Without friction, there is no definition, and without definition, there is no respect. People do not trust those who are endlessly agreeable, because agreement without discernment feels false, unstable, and unsafe. At a deeper psychological level, humans are drawn to consistency, not niceness. They feel grounded around those whose reactions have weight, whose words have edges, whose presence is not endlessly adjustable. When you remove all edges to appear polite, you remove the very structure that allows others to locate you in the social and emotional landscape. There is also a hidden arrogance inside excessive politeness that few dare to confront. When you constantly smooth situations, rescue emotions, and absorb discomfort, you unconsciously assume responsibility for how others feel. This is not humility. It is control, disguised as care. You believe that if you manage everyone's emotional climate, you will be safe, accepted, indispensable. But this creates fragile relationships built on dependency rather than respect. People may rely on you, but reliance is not reverence. The moment you stop providing emotional labor, the bond weakens, because it was never anchored in who you are, only in what you offer. This is why many polite people feel abandoned the moment they assert themselves. The relationship was transactional all along, even if it looked warm on the surface. Another illusion is the belief that silence equals intelligence. You stay quiet in meetings, in conflicts, in moments where your voice matters, telling yourself that restraint shows wisdom. Sometimes it does. But when silence becomes a pattern rooted in fear, it communicates absence, not depth. Others fill the void with their own interpretations, often assuming you lack conviction, competence, or courage. Reputation is shaped less by what you intend and more by what others consistently observe. And what they observe is your behavior under pressure. If pressure erases you, they conclude there is nothing solid to lean on. Respect, at its core, is the recognition of inner structure, and structure reveals itself when tested. There is also the deeper existential cost. When you repeatedly betray your own impulses to appear polite, you fragment your sense of self. You feel split between who you are and who you perform. Over time, this split creates anxiety without a clear cause, fatigue without visible effort, and a dull sense that life is happening slightly out of sync with your soul. You may appear functional, even successful, yet something feels off, as if you are living one step behind your own truth. This dissonance is not weakness. It is your inner compass signaling misalignment. The tragedy is that many people numb this signal rather than listen to it, mistaking endurance for strength. Politeness becomes especially dangerous when it replaces boundaries with moral superiority. You tell yourself you are above conflict, above ego, above power games, while quietly resenting those who assert themselves more freely. This creates a shadow, a suppressed hunger for agency that eventually leaks out through passive aggression, withdrawal, or self-sabotage. Power denied does not disappear, it mutates. Philosophers warned about this long ago. What is repressed does not become virtuous, it becomes unconscious. And what is unconscious controls you more than anything you openly choose. The final paradox is this. People feel safest around those who can say no without cruelty, who can disagree without collapse, who can hold tension without rushing to dissolve it. These individuals are not less kind, they are more trustworthy. Their politeness is grounded in self-respect, not fear. They do not overgive to prove worth. They do not apologize for breathing. They do not explain their existence. Their presence carries a quiet gravity because it is whole, integrated, and unfragmented. This is what the world responds to, even if it never names it out loud. And until you confront the cost of being polite at the expense of being real, your reputation will continue to suffer in ways that feel mysterious but are entirely predictable. The transformation begins the moment you stop treating politeness as a reflex and start treating it as a conscious choice, because what destroys your reputation is not courtesy itself, but unconscious courtesy driven by fear. The first practice is restraint in explanation. Before you justify, pause and ask yourself whether an explanation is necessary or whether it is an attempt to seek permission. Begin answering with fewer words. Not colder words, but cleaner ones. Short sentences anchored in certainty recalibrate how others perceive you and, more importantly, how you perceive yourself. At first, this will feel uncomfortable, even rude, because your nervous system is addicted to reassurance. But discomfort is the signal that a new internal hierarchy is forming. The second practice is selective apology. For 1 week, apologize only when you have objectively caused harm. Notice how often your mouth wants to say sorry simply to soften the moment. Each time you resist, you reclaim a fragment of authority. You will discover that silence often carries more dignity than unnecessary remorse. The third practice is the embodied no. This is not about becoming harsh or selfish, but about aligning your words with your inner signals. When something feels wrong, delayed, or draining, acknowledge it internally before responding. You do not owe immediate answers. Simple phrases like, "I need time to think," or "that doesn't work for me," are powerful precisely because they are calm and final. Expect resistance. People accustomed to your compliance may push back, question, or guilt you. This is not proof you are wrong. It is proof the dynamic is changing. Hold steady. Your nervous system will want to explain, soften, and retreat. Do not let the moment breathe. Respect often arrives after tension, not before it. The fourth practice is boundary-based compassion. Continue to listen, to empathize, to care, but stop absorbing what is not yours. When someone crosses a line, name it without emotional charge. No lectures, no justifications, no moral performance. A simple statement of fact, followed by changed behavior, teaches more than any speech. Boundaries are not walls, they are frames, and without frames, relationships lose shape. You will notice that some connections deepen while others fade. This is not loss, it is filtration. What remains is more real. The fifth practice is micro-confrontation. Do not wait until resentment explodes. Address small misalignments early, calmly, and directly. This trains your psyche to see conflict not as danger, but as clarification. Each time you survive a disagreement without collapse, your confidence stabilizes. You begin to trust yourself under pressure, and that trust radiates outward. People sense when someone is internally supported. They speak differently around you, listen more carefully, test you less. Not because you dominate, but because you no longer disappear. The sixth practice is truthful acknowledgement of your value. This does not mean boasting or comparison, but refusing to diminish reality. When you contribute, own it. When you succeed, do not deflect. When you know, say so. Speak from fact, not ego. This recalibrates your self-image and disrupts the pattern of excessive humility that invites dismissal. You are not responsible for managing others' insecurities. Shrinking does not make you noble. It makes you invisible. The seventh and most difficult practice is identity consistency. Decide what you stand for and let it cost you something. Stop reshaping your personality to fit each room. This does not require rigidity, but coherence. When your words, tone, and actions align across contexts, people know where to place you, and placement is the foundation of reputation. Inconsistency confuses others and erodes trust, even if it looks polite. Coherence feels risky because it invites judgment, but judgment is the price of being seen, and being seen is safer than being erased. Expect inner resistance. Your mind will warn you of rejection, isolation, and conflict. Thank it, then proceed anyway. Fear is not an enemy, it is a threshold guardian. On the other side of that threshold is a quieter life. Not because there is less tension, but because there is less self-betrayal. You will notice your energy returning, your speech slowing, your presence grounding. Reputation shifts subtly, then suddenly. People consult you differently, test you less, and when they do, you hold. This is not about becoming less kind. It is about becoming congruent. Politeness rooted in fear drains you. Politeness rooted in self-respect stabilizes you. One dissolves your reputation, the other solidifies it. Practice these shifts daily, imperfectly, patiently. Transformation is not loud, it is cumulative. And one day, you will realize that without announcing it, without demanding it, the world has begun to treat you differently because you finally stopped abandoning yourself in the name of being polite. What you have seen throughout this journey is not a call to become harsh, dominant, or emotionally closed, but an invitation to reclaim something far more essential: your inner access. The habits that were destroying your reputation were never about manners. They were about fear disguised as virtue, about survival strategies learned early and practiced unconsciously for years. Over-explaining, apologizing for existing, avoiding tension, shrinking your truth. All of these were attempts to stay safe in a world that taught you that approval equals protection. But now you see the cost. Each polite betrayal of yourself quietly taught others how to treat you, and more painfully, taught you how little space you believed you deserved. Reputation is not built by trying to be liked. It is built by being legible, grounded, and internally aligned. People respect what feels whole, what does not wobble under pressure, what can hold silence, disagreement, and limits without collapsing. When you stop dissolving yourself to keep the peace, something unexpected happens. The noise around you settles. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You explain less, but people listen more. You give less, but what you give is real. This is not manipulation, it is coherence, and coherence is felt before it is understood. You may lose certain dynamics as you change. Some people will resist, test, or quietly drift away. Let them. What leaves was sustained by your self-erasure. What remains will meet you at eye level. And that is where real respect lives. Remember this: being seen is always safer than being tolerated, and self-respect is always quieter than fear, but infinitely stronger. Now ask yourself this, and sit with it honestly. Where have you been polite at the cost of being true? And what would shift if you stopped today? If this message resonated, let it anchor by engaging with it. Like the video, subscribe for deeper explorations of the self, and write in the comments the phrase you committed to earlier, not for the algorithm, but as a declaration to yourself. Because the moment you stop abandoning who you are, the world has no choice but to respond differently.